Staying with us now to the U.S., where President Biden has given a farewell speech, bringing his decades-long career in politics to an end. In a farewell address, the outgoing president of the United States, Joe Biden, has warned of a dangerous oligarchy taking shape in America. He says it is an oligarchy which is of extreme wealth, power, and influence that really threatens the country's democracy, its basic rights and freedom. He was speaking during his farewell address in Washington, D.C. We have more in this package.
The outgoing president of the United States, Joe Biden, is rounding up his single four-year term in office with self-commendation of his administrative feats, as well as warnings signaling the need for caution in several areas of national life. Making his televised farewell speech at his Oval Office in Washington, D.C., he presented his administration's achievement to include job creation, infrastructure development, healthcare, as well as leading the country out of the COVID-19 pandemic and making the U.S. a safer country. With optimism, President Biden said it will take time to feel the full impact of all done by his government, but the seeds are planted and they will grow and will bloom for decades to come.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before, more than a century ago. But the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy. They just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class, the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. And we've got to do that again. In the last 4 years, that is exactly what we've done. People should be able to make as much as they can, but play by the same rules, pay their fair share of taxes. So much is at stake.
President Biden also issued warnings about climate change, saying, quote, "Powerful forces want to wield their unchecked influence to eliminate the steps we've taken to tackle the climate crisis to serve their own interests for power and profits," end quote. On information technology, Mr. Biden warned that Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power.
So much is at stake. Right now, the existential threat of climate change has never been clearer. Just look across the country, from California to North Carolina. That's why I signed the most significant climate and clean energy law ever in the history of the world, and the rest of the world is trying to model it now. It's working, creating jobs and industries of the future.
Closing his speech, President Biden called on Americans to stand and guard their country as they keep the flame of progress burning. His farewell address came on the same day he announced the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas.
And for more on President Biden's farewell speech, global affairs analyst Boya Kyoko joins us from Texas in the United States. Good to have you join us.
Hello, good afternoon, Lagos.
Good afternoon. I wanted to start with, just asking you what you make of the speech, with the understanding that this is not just his final speech as the president of the U.S., but also ending his decades-long career.
Yes, I think President Biden had to come out to lay out all he has achieved in the last 4 years and kind of like drawing a curtain on his more than 50 years of public service. So it was something to just show that, okay, I promised I was going to do this and I was able to go this far. And I think that was a good speech coming from him.
He mentioned the rise of an oligarchy in the U.S. and he talked about those in the tech industry. Is that the concern that Americans share when you see how the level of funding that has gone into Donald Trump's inauguration by those in the tech industry? The kind of influence that Elon Musk also has in his administration is also of concern to a lot of people. He's interfering in the politics of Canada, of the UK. Are Americans also worried about the rise of an oligarchy in the U.S.?
Yes, because it's a worry for Americans and it's a worry for the whole world because it's a new frontier in technology that you can sit down in one corner of your home or a cubicle somewhere and you put out information. That information goes out instantly all over the world. It's new. It used to take days, months, sometimes to get news from one corner of the world to the other. But now it's done at an instant. So the influence on the election, we also so it's a new frontier, and the whole world is concerned because we see the tech billionaires tweeting us, writing something about Canada, UK. I'm talking about Elon Musk at this point, and it's having rippling effect. We're seeing the effect on the people. So yes, it's a big concern by everybody at the moment.
And he's now very close to power, and I'm sticking with Elon Musk. Are there systems in place to check that kind of influence? Because he's now also the head of a new government relations department, which never existed anyway.
Yes, it's a new thing, and yes, it's going to wield a lot of influence. But I believe there are checks and balances. We'll see how the Senate, the House responds to the Department of Government Efficiency and how things play out in that regard. It's going to be an interesting couple of months because you can see some people are kicking back against Elon Musk already, and those are the strong supporters of President Trump. So we're going to see how that plays out. It's a new frontier, like I said.
And it's not just Elon Musk. We've also seen Facebook take some decisions that people felt were influenced by their relationship with Donald Trump, which is the issue of taking off the fact-checking, the fact-checking angle away from Facebook. And people felt that that was influenced by Donald Trump. But I also wanted to talk about Biden, who is now leaving office. What sort of legacy do you think he leaves behind when you consider his last days in office during the election when he was being forced not to run for elections?
I mean, in that regard, it's obvious how the fact checking played out, and we can see that the Facebook, for example, is trying to dance to the tunes of the current government. President Biden pushed in a lot of fact checking to be involved at the inception of his government. But the new phase we're going into, President Trump does not believe in that. Elon Musk says, "Oh, free speech has to rule." So we are seeing a different thing coming in, and we are seeing a different approach to how things will be done. And we saw the owner of Meta, Facebook, come out last week to say no more fact checking. So it's like I said earlier, it's going to be an interesting couple of years, and we see how this goes. Is it that the tech billionaires will be dancing to the tunes of every government that comes in? This hasn't been it might have been a subtle way of doing things before, but this is a new way that we are now seeing things being done openly and publicly. Yeah, so we'll see how all of that plays out also now.
Thank you so much for your time, Boya Kuku. A pleasure to have you on. January the 20th is just around the corner. We'll see how things play out, like you said.
Thank you very much for having me.